This video is brought to you by Eargasm. What's up guys, Kyle here again, and guess what? Today is FAQ'N Friday. First off, let me start this video by saying thank you to everybody out there who watched my viewers comments video last week and sent me kind words and reached out to me to make sure that I was doing okay. I had mentioned in that video that I had kind of been feeling just really unmotivated, really kind of unhappy and not really excited about anything, and just overall was going through a little bit of a funk, and that's why my content release had kind of started to drop and everything. And you guys seriously reached out and really completely helped turn my mood around. So thank you guys so much for the support. Seriously, that was awesome. I really appreciate each and every one of you that not only views and subscribes to the channel, but leaves me comments like that really brighten my mood and just remind me how happy I am to be doing this as a profession, belligerent amateur. But yeah, seriously, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. I am feeling much better this week. I am super excited to be filming content again. I'm excited about guitar gear again. And I think it's really gonna show in some of my upcoming videos, so really appreciate it. Thanks so much. So for this week's episode, we are actually going to start off with a comment from my viewers' comments episode last week that pertains to the tube issue, since that seems to be the hot button topic in the guitar world right now. Blizzard Snakes commented on that video and said an update has been posted on the EHX shop page 31622. I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but it basically goes on to say that the sanctions have been lifted on the import of vacuum tubes from Russia. But with that being said, it sounds like they are going to have increased prices due to the tariffs being placed on Russia by the United States right now. So I'm not gonna lie, I'm not up on all that stuff. I'm not sure how true that is. It sounds very logical. It sounds like something that would actually happen, but I already see people in the guitar community basically saying that it's their way of increasing prices without any cost in production increases or anything. So I don't know. I know that there are tariffs being placed on Russia. I don't know if it affects the tube category. I would imagine that it would. Why wouldn't it? But you guys let me know down in the comments if you have a little bit more knowledge about me than this, because I am not very knowledgeable on the subject. But yeah, it seems like we will not be having a tube shortage, so that's great. Now, everybody who went out and panic bought tubes, number one, you're like the worst type of person. And I'm not talking about somebody who bought an extra set of tubes for their one tube amp. I'm saying people who went out and bought tons and tons of tubes from these people that didn't need them, that their only intentions were essentially to hoard them or to turn around and scalp them. I mean, come on guys, if you're going out there buying 50 power tubes or 50 preamp tubes at a time, you are literally not going to ever go through that many tubes unless you are a touring musician who plays constantly. One thing that I have come across in the tube amp world is that people retube their amps way too often. I run into so many guys that retube their amps once a year, no matter how much they played it. They're like, oh, it's been a year, time to retube my amp. That's dumb. I also run into people who every time they buy a used amp, they automatically retube it without even turning the amp on or testing it out to make sure that everything sounds okay. You're also dumb. Guys, there is just this stigma that power tubes wear out. People message me all the time asking me for tube recommendations, and I say, well, is there anything wrong with the tubes that are in your current amp? And most of the time they say no, and I say don't bother, because if they are good at working tubes, there really isn't a solid reason to change them out. Will you get little differences by changing out different power tubes? Yes and no, it all depends on the type of tube that you're coming from and the type of tube that you're changing to. If you're changing within the same family, say 6L6s, the differences are gonna be very, very subtle. But if you're going from a 6L6 to a 5881, or if you're going from a 6L6 to an EL34 family tube like you can in the Mesa dual rectifiers, you'll definitely notice more of a difference in that amp. But again, it's not gonna be much, guys. You're not going to fix an amp that you don't like by changing the power tubes, more than likely. And long before this whole situation happened, I always recommended people have extra tubes on hand just in case something goes wrong, because even if you don't think you're gonna need them, most of the time when you have an issue with a tube amp, it is because something tube related in the amp has gone wrong. It's usually not related to the amp itself, but more so one of the tubes is having an issue and causing the problem. So I always tell people to have an extra set of power tubes on hand and a few extra preamp tubes, just so they have something as tools for troubleshooting the possible issues that are arising with their amp, because that is pretty much always the first stop. Another point is most of the people who watch this channel are playing like EVH and PV and Mesa style amps, and all of those amps come biased really cold from the factory. So they're already biased cold, and when an amp is biased cold, that does not put nearly as much stress on the power tubes. Therefore, they last much, much longer. So keep that in mind. But yeah, as far as the preamp tubes, I like to have different preamp tubes on hand to do tube rolling, it's called. If I run into an amp where I feel like there's a little minute change that I would like from it, like say an amp is just a tad bit too smooth, I plug a Tungsol into V1, and that tends to add a little bit of top end sizzle. And again, these are subtle changes. They're not going to change an amp night and day, but they do make a little bit of difference, and it's just another way to kind of fine tune your entire setup. No, it does not make as much difference as speakers and cabinets, but it's nice to have those on hand, not only for troubleshooting, but just to mess around with different preamp tube combinations to see if anything really makes a difference to your ear. Most guitarists' ears are not really trained in the ways of picking out little minute details as much as they like to think they are. A lot of it becomes placebo effect. But if you have a really good trained ear, you can tend to pick those differences out. But you're really not gonna be able to pick out those differences if your ears are shot, which is why Eargasm is the sponsor for today's video. So guys, in true belligerent amateur fashion, I spent years and years of my life practicing and playing in loud punk and hardcore bands without any sort of ear protection whatsoever. And really, it only occurred to me a few years ago that, you know what, I should really be protecting my ears. After a couple really loud practice sessions in a small room, I had started to notice that my ears were ringing when there was no other sound around. And immediately I started to panic, because I'm like, here we go. Tinnitus is setting in, I'm losing my hearing, I'm an idiot for not protecting my ears all these years. So immediately I ran out and I bought earplugs, and I have used earplugs in practice and live settings ever since. But I've always kind of had issues with the earplugs that I use. Now the foam ones, they block all the high end, and while they do a great job at protecting your ears, they make everything sound like crap. And I also tried some of the rubber flanged type earplugs that you can get for cheap, and you stick those in your ears and they're supposed to let a little bit of high frequency through, but they were always just super uncomfortable to me. But with the Eargasm earplugs, guys, I can say that that has completely changed for me. And I'm not just saying that because they are paying me to review their product. I legitimately mean that. Now, Eargasm's earplugs are different because they are designed with sound quality in mind. They are meant to bring the sound level down, but retain all the detail as if you did not have earplugs in at all. And I can honestly say they do exactly that. And I was really, really surprised when I first put this pair of earplugs in my ears. It was like a band was playing in the next room, and then suddenly somebody opened the door and all the clarity started coming through, and then the band started playing quieter at the same time. That almost worked. I cannot recommend them highly enough, and not only do they do a great job at preserving the sound quality while lowering the overall volume, but they also have multiple different models in order to fit your ear correctly, to give you the most comfort, and to give you the amount of sound reduction that you require. So if you're interested in protecting your most sensitive parts, down in the description of this video, I have an affiliate link for you guys to purchase Eargasm earplugs if you are interested. I honestly can't recommend them enough. They have been a game changer for me in the earplug world, and I will not go without these things again. So thanks again to Eargasm for sponsoring this video. Links down below. And finally, let's get to some questions in this frequently asked question video. Wise Shredhead asks, any ideas how to get guitar tone to sound like For Those Who Were Crucified? Thanks for your question, man, and if you guys out there watching aren't familiar with what For Those Who Were Crucified is, it is an absolutely killer album by the band All Out War that is basically like Slayer meets 90s hardcore. So if you guys aren't familiar with All Out War, I definitely urge you to go check them out. They are one of my favorite bands, and they have some serious rippers in their catalog. But For Those Who Were Crucified is pretty much unanimously regarded as their best album. So for the tone on that album, I honestly have no idea what they used. I'm gonna go ahead and guess based on the tone on that album, it was some sort of Marshall amplifier. Now, I can't tell if it was boosted or not, but it sounds like they kind of rolled a lot of the high end off and maybe even scooped some of the mids out in order to get a thicker tone. But I know a lot of bands were using like JCM 900s in that era because they were cheap to find used and they did the high gain thing. But to be honest, I don't know what they used. I could possibly reach out to them and see what they did use, and then maybe make a video trying to recreate those guitar tones if that's something that you guys are interested in. So make sure to comment down below if that's something that you guys want to see from me. Of a lot of the 90s hardcore bands out there, a lot of them had really bad guitar tone. I did not like a lot of the recorded guitar tones from 90s hardcore, but All Out War tended to have good tones on all of their albums. So great question, man. We will definitely dive into that deeper since I do not know the answer. And again, if you guys want to see me reach out to the band, see what they used, and then try to recreate their tone, let me know down below. The Pet Cobra says, big gulps, huh? Well, see you later. I think I honestly got more comments on this FAQ video based on my Dumb and Dumber reference than I did on the other content of the video, and certainly more than questions. So, oops. Seriously guys, I'm going back through here and there are no questions from last week's episode that I can address. They're literally all Dumb and Dumber quotes or people commenting on Zilla cabs or modelers. So I guess that pretty much does it for me today. All right, I found one from the previous episode. We'll hit this one and then we will call it a day. Matthew Sandstrom says, question about buying used gear directly from an acquaintance rather than from Reverb eBay type site. When they don't have a price listed, how do you decide on how much to offer to try to get a good deal without disrespecting the seller? Do you decide on a percentage of what the thing would cost new or some other criteria? This is something I've kind of chickened out of even doing in the past because of social anxiety. Thank you, Matthew, and that is a really good question actually, and one that I hadn't really put a lot of thought to, but when you are trying to negotiate used gear prices, especially with someone you know, and even more so with friends, it can be kind of a delicate subject because people tend to take like low offers and stuff like that offensively, or even something that they perceive as a low offer but is well within reason considering market prices. And it can honestly become a point of contention. It's happened with me before too. So my best advice to you is if they don't have a price listed, try to get a price or at least a ballpark price out of them. I personally hate it when people have items listed without prices on them and then somewhere in the description it says something stupid like, make me an offer. Because in reality, they're hoping somebody is going to offer them a ridiculous price and they're gonna take it. But I'm going to guess that that almost never happens. So the first thing that I try to do is avoid those people because they are usually terrible at negotiating and they're terrible to work with when it comes to used gear sales, buying and selling. It just becomes a very cumbersome process. But if it is an item that I do really want, I will kind of prod them and just be like, hey, you know, you don't have a price listed, you say make an offer, but realistically, like, you know, do you know where you want to be on this thing? Do you have a price in mind? And most of the time, people will finally come out and name some sort of price unless they really just want to be a giant pain in the ass, in which point I just move on. But yeah, it's really hard to negotiate without having some sort of starting price from the seller, because you as the buyer, you want to get it for as low as you can get it for, and the seller wants to get as much out of it as they can in most cases. And a lot of the times if you offer them a low amount, they will take it offensively and they will either not respond to you or they'll come back at you with some sort of insult or sarcastic remark or something like that, and then you're already off to a bad start if you even do want to continue trying to barter with this person. So that's why I always recommend just, you know, trying to get the person to name their price, and if it's too high for you, or you can say, sorry man, that's a little bit more than I'm looking to pay. Here is the price that I was kind of hoping to get it for, and I always recommend backing up the price that you have with sold listings from something like Reverb or eBay, or even some stuff on Guitar Center. Now, Guitar Center is not always reliable because sometimes they have stuff posted for ridiculous prices for no reason, like a PV Triumph 60 combo that's been sitting up there for a month at $1,000. Nobody's ever gonna buy that for $1,000. So don't use stuff like that as a reference, but if the prices on Guitar Center line up with what you're seeing on sites like Reverb and eBay under the sold listings, then you can kind of reference that as somewhat of a point and know kind of where the low price and the high price are going to be on that item. And I typically try to stay somewhere in between that. I try not to lowball people. I really don't like lowballing people, and I would rather both people come away from the transaction happy, getting what they got, feeling like they made out on their end. So I always try to offer a middle of the road, even as my bottom starting price. And you know, if it's something I really want, we'll work up a little bit from there. So yeah, those would be my suggestions, man. You gotta be delicate about it, but again, you really want to make the seller kind of name their price, or at least name their price range before you start throwing offers and people start getting pissed off. That has really been the best method that has worked for me throughout years and years of buying and selling. So hope that was helpful. I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And for next week, leave your questions down below in the comments so I actually have something to answer, because the last 2 weeks have been pretty scarce as far as questions. You guys are commenting on the videos a lot, which I love. I love going down there and engaging with you. But at the same time, if I don't have any questions to answer, then this show becomes kind of pointless. So make sure to leave your questions down below in the comments. Greatly appreciate it. If you want to support the channel, down in the description of this video are all my support links, including my Sweetwater affiliate link, as well as my Patreon membership page. Consider adding your list to this name. What? Consider adding your name to this list of very fine people by joining my Patreon community. I'll love you forever, whether you want me to or not. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Kyle here again. We'll see you next time.